Thanks for joining us. I'm Nancy Furness, and this is We've Got Issues. We're filming today on site at Coquitlam City Centre Library, and we'd like to thank the library for providing the space for us to carry out our interviews. Before we get started, I just want to also acknowledge that our interviews are taking place on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of Coquitlam First Nation. So we thank the Coquitlam who continue to live on these lands and to care for the lands and the waters and all that lies above and below. Joining me today is Mayor Meghan Laity of Port Moody. So thank you so much for joining us today, Meghan.
Well, thank you for having me.
Last time we spoke, we talked a lot about reconciliation and the role of Port Moody in promoting meaningful reconciliation. Can you maybe just give us a quick update on any changes that have happened there?
Well, I think probably since the last time we talked, we've hired our new Indigenous Relations Manager.
I think you mentioned that last time.
Yeah, we were in the process of doing that, I think. Yes. And then so that has happened, and so she's very busy working to build those relationships, and we're continuing down that path of reconciliation through that work. And I'm really excited about some of the things that are going to be coming forward in that regard.
Oh, excellent. So we'll stay tuned, yes, and hopefully we can learn more about that a little bit later.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Now, we're going to cover a whole bunch of territory. I hope that's okay. There's a lot of updates and different things that I think the public would be interested in learning about. One of the things that we have to talk about is development. Now, there's a lot of development going on in Port Moody, and one question that comes up is, who are these developments for? Do you have a way in Port Moody, I know this subject has come up recently, to ensure that people who are buying strata and units on sales and pre-sales, that the priority is going to people who are actually going to live there, and perhaps even to give Port Moody residents priority? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard you can't really tell somebody that when they buy a piece of property that they have to live in it.
Right.
That's difficult, although it is felt that if somebody is a local resident or somebody who lives in the area is interested in purchasing, you're thinking that they're likely going to live in those units. We had a bit of an issue come up quite a few years ago, actually, sometime around 2015, where we had a number of residents come forward and say that they were having difficulty. We didn't have a lot of units on the market.
Okay.
We weren't really developing a lot back then, and when those units came for sale, there was a concern that they weren't getting in. There was other, by the time they got to the place, they were all sold. So that was a big concern of ours. So we had tasked staff to put forward to maybe create a policy where we could allow residents first, like the people that lived in Port Moody and even the Tri-Cities would have an opportunity to first look at and have an opportunity to purchase. So we were advised legally that we couldn't really have a policy or a bylaw around that, but we still felt very adamant that we needed to do something. So what the solution was is that our staff came up with was to integrate into our housing agreements
agreements with the developer.
With the developer. Okay. So once the units were ready to be sold, they have to sign off on a housing agreement, and that sort of outlines all of the specifics around how that housing is going to be, how that housing is going to look going forward. So in the housing agreements, we have implemented this part that requires that residents get a first opportunity. So that's been going quite well for probably about 7 years. So anecdotally, though, we've been told that there isn't a high uptake. I think we were told somewhere between 2% and 4% of the units were actually being sold to locals.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't change our perspective that we need to keep that going, that we need to keep focused on making sure that people from our community actually get an opportunity. I think especially going forward with a lot of the new development that's going to be coming. It'll be a few years down the road, but if we keep in mind that there's a lot of, we have an aging population, a lot of people in Port Moody are living in single family homes and they're looking to downsize.
Yes.
So we want those people to have an opportunity to have first kick of the cat. We want them to be able to come and say, you know, I'm going to sell my home for a family, and I'm going to move into this.
Okay, sort of
unit.
a succession planning there.
Yeah, you can put it that way.
So you say 2 to 4% uptake, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's only 2 to 4% of Port Moody residents or Tri-Cities residents, does it? So there could be more. Like
yeah, no, I mean, so what we've done is typically what happens is that there's a pre-sale when we have and when they go out to market these units, they're giving locals the first 2 weeks.
Okay.
So you have to be a local in order to get in the door for the first 2 weeks. It doesn't mean that people don't come afterwards and still purchase.
Yes.
But it's just that 2 week period isn't really. People aren't climbing.
It's not like 100% Tri-Cities.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying that.
I know that one of the more recent pre-sales that occurred in Port Moody in the old Coronation Park neighborhood, which is West Group, they had their pre-sales. I think that they had them for the first 2 weeks. They told us that they were already 50% sold.
Oh, wow.
Which is really astounding in this market, because we're hearing about in other municipalities where developers are having to fold up, and they're going bankrupt and they can't proceed with their development. So that was really encouraging news. The other thing that was really interesting about that was that almost 100% of those sales were family units.
Oh, that's good to hear.
2 and 3 bedroom units. So the 1 bedrooms, there's not a lot of uptake on those.
Right.
Unfortunately, I mean, the Housing Supply Act, one of the categories that they've given us is that we have to build a certain number of one bedroom units.
Sort of mandated.
We've kind of taken a pushback approach on that, and we had the province sort of come back and respond that, well, if you can, as long as you're selling units, right? Because they had originally told us that they wanted us to sell an astronomical amount of studio and 1 bedrooms.
Well, it's pretty prescriptive.
It is,
right?
And one of the interesting and really exciting things about one of the Beatty Living development that's coming forward is that they have a sort of a template for how their towers are going to be constructed, and they're able to be flexible for the market. So if there's more market demand, right now it's over 50% for family anyways, which is quite high.
Okay.
2 and 3 bedrooms up to 1,300 square feet for their units. These are large units, but if there's more demand for that, then they can make that decision, because we're not prescribing how many units there are as long as they meet our minimums.
Okay.
So I'm kind of I was very happy to hear that, because if what we're hearing is true, that more people are buying family units, then we need to make sure that those are being supplied.
Right. And I just want to circle back to a comment you made, and I find it really interesting. So we're in the middle of what we're calling a housing crisis, and yet you're saying that it's really good news that 50% of these units were sold, and that in other places developers are packing up, and so that's sort of a little bit of a...
It is, and it's really discouraging when we are in a housing crisis, so housing does need to get built, but there seems to be so many things that are causing delay and causing it to be not financially viable for developers. There's the supply shortage, there's work shortage,
Right.
there's a lot of fees and charges that go along, and most recently Metro brought in changed the DCC sort of levy to, it used to be a 1% assist, and now it's a 99% assist. In other words, the developments are now having to pay the entire bulk of the infrastructure.
Can you explain what DCC means for folks that may not be familiar with that term?
Absolutely. So development cost charges, that DCC is a development cost charge. So it is prescribed in the Local Government Act that, you can't, the government recognizes that you can't just build housing and not provide the infrastructure that goes with those housing.
Amenities and
we're not talking about amenities.
Oh, okay. Just infrastructure.
It's really about sewers and roads and sidewalks, and there isn't, I should say, back up a little bit, the DCCs don't talk about amenities in the same way that the new regulations that will come in do, but just talking about DCCs,
right?
These are to pay for, they're designed so that there is money to pay for any infrastructure, like water, pipes, roads, sewers, parks
Right.
that are needed to accompany new development. So
Right.
it's not for replacing old infrastructure.
Exactly. It's not maintenance.
bringing in new
Right.
infrastructure.
Right.
Typically, there's been a 50-50. Like in the city, our DCCs, from the city's perspective, are 50-50. Like,
Okay.
So, but
You're sharing that cost.
we're sharing the cost because we recognize that it can't be only borne by the developer or by the person that's purchasing that home.
Right.
However, in the Metro DCCs, which really cover sewer and water, and these are large, expensive endeavors, those are now, for the bulk is now being paid for by that new development. So they're saying growth will pay for growth. Right?
Okay.
So there's that whole concept of growth pays for growth.
Right.
It doesn't always, but that's where this is coming from.
So this is now a greater burden on the developer.
It's now a greater burden on the developer, and also it adds cost to the home buyer, because those costs have to come from somewhere. So it adds on to, and the developer goes through a whole exercise of pro formas and cost of land. Cost of land is a big contributor to that. So cost of land, cost of development, which includes all of the infrastructure that has to be paid for, plus cost of constructing those buildings with skilled labor, and there isn't a lot of that around. There's a lot of competition out there for that, and then also just getting supplies. So all of these things combined have made for a difficult situation for some developers.
Yeah, and I think it gets really complicated because you're talking about a housing crisis. We also have the affordability crisis that's interwoven into that. So we could probably talk about this for a long time.
We could. Let's do another segment just on housing.
Yeah,
and
I think we should.
Yeah, it would be really would be an interesting conversation.
Okay, so we're going to set that aside for now, but we'll come back to that at another time and do a whole interview on that.
Yep.
Okay, but just still kind of, can we stay with development a little bit?
Sure.
Now at Coronation Park, everything's coming down there. I'm personally really sad to see the trees all coming down there.
Yeah.
It's going to be a huge change, but you had worked with Renewal Development, a company who has some pretty innovative approaches, and they took some of those really solid houses from the Coronation Park site and took them to communities that could best use them. And I actually saw some of those houses over in Sechelt this summer.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
Oh, how lovely.
So they've been transported and they're being put to really good use, which is one way to reduce, the environmental and economic costs of redevelopment. But Port Moody also has initiatives that helps to sort of ensure that houses aren't just demolished and wasted.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that, the new initiatives put forward by Port Moody?
Well, I mean, we have always taken a position that the city is very supportive of sustainable building practices. So our bylaws, we just implemented some bylaws that talk about deconstruction of buildings.
Right.
So everything has to be recycled.
Yes.
So so if somebody comes into the city and they want to demolish a home, or they want to let's say replace the home with another home, given that the provincial SHMU regulations have come in, which is the ability for a person to take a single family home and replace it with either 2 or 3 or even 4 homes on that same property.
Yes.
We thought that we need to make sure that we're proactive in this area, so that when people are endeavoring to do this, that they're being responsible, that they're being that the work is sustainable. And so we have requirements where people have to recycle anything that's demolished. But we also want to encourage people to look at their home and to see if it can't be used and relocated and be used by somebody else. So we support these in the city, and it's something that we find is a more I guess, obtainable goal now with companies like Renewal Development.
Right. So it's taking advantage of those opportunities and looking for further ways to maybe recycle and reduce the waste, because that's a big environmental cost when you demolish all those homes. So that's good to hear. Okay, we're going to move on to something entirely different now. Okay. Okay, so recently Port Moody moved to ban rodeos. Can you tell me about that? Does Port Moody have rodeos?
I don't think we're ever going to have rodeos. Okay. I don't think we ever have. We may have. Okay. I'm not sure.
What was the purpose of that?
It's more taking a position around animal welfare concerns. So it is, I guess, it's symbolic. It's a symbolic gesture.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it sort of goes hand in hand with other bans that we've put in the city around that are designed to with animal welfare in mind.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think now there's a motion going forward to ban live displays of animals, as well as petting zoos, things like that.
Yeah, so we did talk about petting zoos and sort of mobile displays previously, but it's actually come to the council table. We've given direction to staff to develop bylaws that will prohibit those activities in Port Moody. And really, it's about the focus on animal welfare, but there's also other issues and other concerns around the animal health and safety, but public health and safety as well. So it speaks to the human side of it as well. And there is some consideration, and there was some discussion around the fact that and the SPCA was very involved in this, in these discussions.
On the animal rights side of it, animal welfare.
Their position was that there isn't a lot of educational value in these. You know, I'm not sure if there is or if there isn't, but that was one of the positions that they took. But I do want to say that the organizations that do these mobile pet displays, they're in a bit of an awkward position, because what would happen if we didn't have those organizations, right? And I'm not saying that they should be taking them out to the public and having them displayed, and because that can cause distress with the animals. But I think that they're seeing this as the only way for them to be able to raise money to be able to feed these animals. So these these are exotic animals that come from other countries. They're mismanaged. They're often abandoned. And what we don't want to see is somebody taking their exotic animal and just dropping it off in a park.
Right.
So these organizations serve a purpose. They do actually serve a very good purpose and a very important. They play an important role.
Well, is there any sort of leeway for rescue type groups, or
not in the bylaw that we have right now? But so what that makes me think, and what that makes me sort of wonder, is why is the province not providing some funding for that, or why are they not partnering with the SPCA? Because in my estimation, the SPCA actually uses those entities to take animals that they're not equipped to deal with. So why is it? We have to figure out a better way for them to get funding. So whether it's lobbying to get them funding from the province, or sort of providing better information to the public so that they can give money, or maybe, I don't think that the answer is solely to just ban these and walk away. We have to recognize that these animals need to be cared for.
Well, if they're rescue animals, then there should maybe be another mechanism to deal with that.
Yeah.
So something you're still going to think about.
Well, I don't think the city has much say in that, but I would just put it out there that we have an obligation to assist them in some way. So whether it's if you're deciding who you're going to give your funds to, and you might give. If you give to the SPCA, you might give a portion to one of those organizations as well. Right,
and I can sort of see a little bit of a human health issue too with mobile displays and things like that. We're talking things like bird flu, things will come up like that. So I don't know if it's a concern or not, but something to throw into that whole consideration.
There's definitely a legitimate concern about that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we are saying we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be having those displays.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is actually a case of that happening, but it could.
Meghan, I'm going to pivot again on you here.
There's everything we could talk about.
There's so much we could talk about.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Port Moody Volunteer Fire Department. Now, Port Moody has had a volunteer fire department for, I believe it's 111 years. So there's a big history there, and relationships that go back a long, long way. And it was decided recently not to fund the Port Moody Volunteer Fire Department going forward, and they have that's causing them to disband. Can you speak to that? Like, what was behind that decision?
So, yes, the most recent decision on the budget, it reflected that decision, but the decision was really an operational decision. It was a decision that was made on the recommendation of the chief. So the volunteer, I want to start off by just saying that the city values the work that they've done, and they value the relationship that the volunteer fire department, and it's really, they're actually paid on call. They're paid, right, to do work, but we value the relationship between the volunteer fire department and our paid career fire department. Our council is really committed to moving forward with a fully functional, paid career fire department, and so in that, our chief's perspective is that there is too much. There isn't a lot of alignment between what the volunteer firefighters can bring to the table in that regard, with regards to fighting fires in the city, and what is required under the provincial guidelines around firefighting. So, in other words, and I want to just say that the volunteer firefighters do more than just, have done more than just go to fires, right? They do a lot of other things in the community. They do a lot of really good work. Yes. And so I was disappointed to hear you say that they've decided to disband, because...
Oh, is that not correct?
As far as I know, while we aren't going to be utilizing them in that capacity, in the capacity as working side by side with our career firefighters, we still want to see them work in the community and represent their organization. And we have been working with them to try and figure out a way forward. Like, how is this going to look going forward? If you're not doing this aspect of what you're doing, what else can you do? And what else do you want to be involved in? I mean, we see a really great opportunity for them to be part of our, be part of the group that helps in emergencies, for instance. If they have a dedication to the community and they have a desire to serve, there's lots of ways that they can do that. And we have initiated a feedback loop with them to continue these conversations around what it is that they want to see, how they see this entity moving forward.
Oh, that's good to know.
We don't want them to go away. It's just the changing nature and the built environment is such that there is not as much that we can that they can do for us in that regard.
Okay, so will the city still be supporting them in some way?
So the city would support them in that capacity, in a different capacity, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll wait to hear how that sort of unfolds going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we are. I think it's important to point out that we are one of the last municipalities in the region that still had volunteer firefighters, and there's a reason for that. It's just as our department is growing and maturing and moving towards this full force career department, you have to make these kind of decisions, and unfortunately that was one of them. But I am happy to say that our commitment to the career firefighters and to our fire department is stronger than ever. We have a strategic plan that looks to build that department, and this council is extremely aligned in that regard, and we look forward to seeing. I know that we're going to be getting the fire department master plan coming forward in the next month to council, and we'll be looking at the ways that that council can support this department moving forward.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for bringing us up to date on that. Can we talk a little bit about recreation and what's happening there? And
Of course.
I'm sorry, I know this is huge. If we
It's a lot.
we're getting close to the end of our time here, but if you can, I know it went way too fast. If you can just give us a quick update on what's happening in parks and recreation.
So we've just we're looking to get public input on our recreation facilities feasibility study. And basically what we're looking for in that is we're looking to determine where are the gaps, what are the services that we're offering, where are the areas that we need to improve.
Okay.
What kind of programming does the community want to see going forward? Like, what is working, what is not working? And we're also looking at our facilities. And so our municipality is not unlike many where we have aging infrastructure.
Right.
So we wanted to be able to have an assessment of, what does our infrastructure look like? Where are we where are we missing the mark? And which buildings need to be reconstructed? Which buildings could use
like Kyle Center?
Oh, yeah, Kyle Center had, the decision on Kyle Center was made probably in 2014. We were not going to be putting any more money into that facility. That was a strategic decision that was made, and I'm excited about Kyle Center. I think that there will be some really exciting things coming forward for the community to sink their teeth into on Kyle Center. Council's very committed to replacing that. This council is absolutely committed to bringing in a new building. So it's just, how do you do it?
So it won't be the same old Kyle Center. It's going to be something new and different?
Something new and different.
Okay.
Something new and different, and something that serves the community.
Okay, so we will circle back on that later when there's a little bit more to report on that.
Yeah.
And I just want to wrap up with one last question, talking about a motion that was brought forward, I believe, to look at testing, doing some sound testing in Port Moody with respect to traffic.
Yeah, so it's the noise cameras. Okay, so if you think about like a red light camera, where you've got this high definition camera, and it will detect if somebody has run a red light.
Right.
So it'll take a picture.
It just flashes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's similar technology to that, but it's also got a noise reader on it. So so just backing up a little bit, the community over the years has complained, and it's not just one part of the community; it's multiple places in the community where, for various reasons, there is a concern around noise from automobiles. So and particularly, sort of cars that have been
modified.
Modified. So there's an opportunity. We heard about an opportunity to do a pilot project, and so that where we could install these cameras with the noise meters on them.
Interesting.
So we thought that it would be an interesting project to go to. So it's not going to cost. The idea is that it won't cost any money, but we'll see what.
So it's a pilot too.
It's a pilot project. Yeah. So the idea is that. So it's really hard we do have noise bylaws, but it's really hard for a bylaw officer to go in there and after the fact,
there's no.
And then even if a resident is taping it, you can't determine what the noise level is.
Well, you can't connect the car and the noise, right?
So these will actually take a picture. We can't enforce our noise bylaw using this, but it will do what it will do is give us anecdotal information about what are the hot spots in the city. Are there issues in the city around noise from vehicles?
It'd be interesting to see the data from that. When is this happening?
Well, we've tasked staff to come back with a work plan for that, and to come back and let us know. So we're not sure when that's going to happen, but council has given the green light for that.
Not the red light.
Not the red light. The red light.
No, so, thank you for that. I think there's just so much that we need to come back and follow up on with you.
Yeah,
So-
I think we could probably do a lot more than just 20 minutes.
We definitely could. So we will come back and have another interview soon, I hope, if you're agreeable, and just sort of keep up to date on all of these things,
Yeah.
because there's a lot going on in Port
There is,
Moody.
and I'm happy to share with you what's happening. And you know, we have a really great council, and we're very, very extraordinarily aligned on so many issues, and we're getting a lot of work done.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing with us, and thanks so much for coming in today and taking
You're
time out of your
welcome.
busy schedule.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. This is We've Got Issues, and we've been speaking with Meghan Laity, who is the mayor of Port Moody. Thank you.